Let me ask you something. When Christians say that they want more biblical values to shape America's future, why do people instantly yell theocracy? Why is it okay for secular ideology to dominate our schools, run our laws, run our institutions? But if you say the Bible should guide policy, suddenly you're dangerous. Here's the truth. America cannot survive as a morally neutral nation. We're either shaped by God's wisdom or man's whims. And history shows that when a society turns its back on God, freedom erodes, families break down, and justice turns into chaos. Today, I'm going to make the case that Christian nationalism, when defined biblically, is not only good for America, but absolutely necessary if we want freedom and justice to stand for our future generations. So welcome back to the Austin Bradshaw Show, where we give you truth without compromise. My name's Austin, and today we're going to be talking about something that's very important. I've already named it Christian nationalism. Here's my thesis in one sentence. America is best served when our public life and policies are shaped by the moral wisdom of Christianity, when the state protects religion, and when our civic institutions draw on Christian moral formations to sustain liberty and the common good. Here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to lay out the problem for you. Why America is morally adrift right now. Then we'll build the case for Christian nationalism from the Bible, from the Founding Fathers, and from the Constitution. After that, we'll talk about what a Christian nationalist view might look like. Then we'll handle the most common objections. And finally, we'll close with a call to action for every listener who wants to see a more just and moral nation. A country keeps its laws on paper, but those laws slowly start losing their moral weight. People stop trusting one another, lying becomes normal, families weaken, and corruption spreads. That country may still call itself free, but it's dying from the inside because of division. The founders knew this. That's why they said our system only works for moral and religious people. Christianity is not about coercion. It's about formation, shaping hearts, habits, and public life so that righteousness becomes the norm, not the exception. So let's address the problem. America is deeply divided. Deeply. Like, it's so divided. We are not the United States of America. We're the divided states of America because there's so much division. You're either on this side or you're on this side. You have two political parties at each other's throats at all times, constantly stirring up chaos, constantly accusing, name-calling, and just being terrible. Both sides. We can't even agree on what's good anymore. That's how bad it's gotten. Is life sacred? Is marriage sacred? Is truth objective, or is it just someone's opinion? Politics has turned into tribal warfare. Truly it has. You have people killing other people simply because they disagree with them. The founders warned us that this would happen. They said that a republic cannot survive without virtue, and virtue doesn't grow in a vacuum. It needs a moral soil to grow, and Christianity is that soil. Now, before we go further, I want to make clear what I mean by Christian nationalism. I'm not talking about forcing people to convert at all. I'm not talking about setting up a state church where everybody has to tithe to the government. I'm talking about a nation that publicly acknowledges that its freedoms and morals come from God and God only, and then orders its laws to reflect His truth only. So I'm going to go ahead and read this off. Christian nationalism means that America's public life, laws, symbols, and civic identity should be shaped by Christian moral truth, not forced faith, but public moral formation. Christian principles like human dignity, justice, rule of law, and protecting the weak are the foundation of a healthy society. So this is why Congress opens in prayer, why our money says, "In God we trust," why presidents swear oaths on the Bible. These are cultural markers that remind us of who we are as a people, as a nation, and who we originally were, and how we've strayed away from that. This is where laws reflect biblical morality, from the conception of life to the grave, strengthening families, defending religious liberty, punishing evil, and rewarding good. Exactly what Romans 13 calls a government to do. Let's be completely clear, because I know people, if they see this, might go to the comments and say, "You're calling for theocracy." In no way, shape, and form am I calling for theocracy at all. If you think I am calling for theocracy, you completely misunderstand what I'm saying. A theocracy is when pastors and priests run the government and punish people for heresy, for committing sins against the church. That's not what I'm calling for. That's medieval Europe. And that's not what the Bible commands in the New Covenant at all. Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world." We persuade, we form consciences, but we do not coerce into this religion. So think of it like this. A theocracy is like a parent chaining a grown child to the floor and making them obey every single thing that they say. Christian nationalism, like I define it, is like a parent living such a righteous life that the child freely chooses to follow their example. So I'm going to list a bunch of Bible verses that go along with what I'm talking about, and then we're going to move on to some quotes from the founders, some quotes from the Constitution, some evidence that our country used to be run this way, and now it's, astray, and we should go back to that. So Genesis 1:27 says, God created mankind in his own image. So every human being has dignity because we're all created in the image of God. That means our laws should protect life. Micah 6:8 says, what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy. So God requires justice and mercy in life. It's not optional. Romans 13:1-2 says, there is no authority except that which God has established. So government is God's servant. God has placed government in its power. He's anointed them. They have power over us, even people that we don't like, even people that pass really terrible laws. God anoints these people into power. Romans 13 also talks about this, and I encourage anybody who is listening or interested that they should read Romans 13. Romans 13 talks a lot about government and God's view of government and how God establishes government. So it's very important. Acts 5:29 says, we must obey God rather than human beings. So this sets a limit. When government defies God, we need to obey God first. Leviticus 19:33-34 says, the foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. So even immigration policy should reflect dignity and fairness. Here are some quotes that I gathered from the founding fathers that also pushed for Christian nationalism and also are evidence that this country was born following Christian morals. So George Washington says, of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. So Washington is warning us here that without religion and morality, that the republic will collapse. These, according to Washington, are not optional. John Adams says, our Constitution was made only for moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Adams is saying that our Constitution assumes self-government. If people cannot govern themselves morally, no paper law can hold society together. Think about that. Like, truly think about that. Take a second and think about what I just said. What is Adams saying, and what did I just say? Because those two things align. And when you think about those two things, your eyes should be opened and you should see our society as, whoa, something needs to change. This is not good. We should not be this divided. We should have never gotten to this point in the first place. But the reason we're at this point is because people are corrupt. The government is corrupt. The government is following its own ideologies. The government is following its own opinions. What's best? What is best for America? What do I think is best for America? No. Instead, we need to rely on God. We need to say that we need God to lead this nation. Not for this nation to lead this nation, because that's where we make mistakes. And this is a quote from the First Amendment, which says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So this protects us from a state-run church, but also protects Christians from being silenced for their beliefs. So what does this look like in real life? To teach moral civil education, protect free exercises so Christian businesses, schools, churches can operate according to their beliefs. To allow faith-based charities to receive public grants without compromising convictions. To create tax policies that support families, support parents, strengthen marriages, and support children. And it means to invest in mentorship programs like church partnerships and community organizations that shape virtue. So one by one, let's go through every single objection that people might bring up when I talk about Christian nationalism. First, people might say, well, Christian nationalism, that's unconstitutional. No, it's not. The Constitution forbids from establishing a national church, but it doesn't forbid biblical morality from influencing public law. The Northwest Ordinance even said that religion, morality, and knowledge are necessary for good government. People also might say, well, Christian nationalism, that's anti-pluralist. Well, first of all, Christian morals actually protect pluralism by upholding justice for everyone. Non-believers benefit when corruption, theft, and murder are all punished. People also might say that Christianity is used to justify racism. First of all, if people are thinking that the Bible is racist, which people might think of, and this is a whole topic on its own, I advise people to watch Cliff Connectly on this issue. It's one, not an issue in the first place. If you think that the Bible is any way advocating for slavery in any way, you misunderstand the Bible completely. It doesn't advocate for slavery at all. And if it becomes such an issue that people are commenting on this video saying that, I'm wrong about this and that, this Bible does advocate for slavery, then I might address this topic in the future on a different video. So technically, when you take stuff out of context, when you take things at what they're saying face value, in the same way you can cut out what I'm saying, you can edit what I say in a certain way so that I sound racist, I sound homophobic, when really I'm not. You can do the same thing to the Bible. You can cut out certain things. You can cut out context. You can make it sound like you can push narratives in a certain way and turn it and twist stories so that it looks homophobic, it looks racist, it looks like it's advocating for slavery when it really isn't, and you just don't really understand what the Bible's talking about. But I want to point out that abolitionists, people like Frederick Douglass, I believe it was William Wilberforce, they used the Bible to end slavery. And if you don't believe me, go look it up. They literally did use the Bible to end slavery. They used the Bible was one of the essential tools that they kept going back to, that they used to help end slavery in the United States. In one of his speeches, Martin Luther King even quoted Amos, which says, "Let justice roll down like waters." Christianity is the solution, not the problem. Another argument people might say is, it's intolerant. No, it's not. True Christianity calls for persuasion, not coercion. Like I said, everyone remains free to believe or disbelieve. That's your choice. It's personal. But laws still need a moral foundation, and that's what I'm advocating for. Another thing people might say is it's anti-democratic. And this is also not true. And here's why. It actually protects democracy. It gives citizens a moral compass to live by. Without morality, democracy degenerates into mob rule. And then the last thing I have is that it's idolatrous, which is also not true. Christian nationalism only becomes idolatry if we're worshiping the nation itself. But when we seek to align our nation with God's truth, we only benefit. That's not idolatry. That's obedience. So here's a question and answer. Will non-Christians be treated unfairly? No. This is about justice and order. Non-Christians benefit from a society with moral clarity and accountability. And who decides what Christian morality is? The Bible does. Not politicians or parties, not people. God's word sets the standard. And we measure every single policy by that standard. As someone who lives in America, I'm so passionate about this country. And I've grown ever more passionate ever since the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And as I'm closing, I want to get something off my chest. I actually want to talk about this flag behind me. What this nation stands for, what this flag stands for, what it originally stood for. I want to address it all right now. When I look at this flag behind me, I don't just see 13 stripes and 50 stars. I see more. I see the story of a nation that was built on God as its foundation. The men and women that came before, they prayed over this land. They asked for wisdom. They wrote documents that acknowledge that our rights come from not people, but from our Creator. But somewhere along the way, we forgot. We traded prayer for politics, truth for comfort, and morality for whatever feels good in the moment. And look around us. Does it feel like we're better for it? Our families are broken. Our communities are divided. And our children, they're confused about who they are and what truth is. I believe with all my heart that America doesn't just need to be strong again. She needs to be godly again. We don't need more politicians. We need more pastors. We don't need more censorship. We need more scripture. We don't need more pride. We need more repentance. This flag represents freedom. But freedom without God eats itself alive. Freedom without God becomes chaos. I'm not calling for forced religion. I'm calling for faith. Faith that shapes us. Faith that shapes our nation. Faith that humbles us. Faith that ultimately brings us back together. If we want America to be truly great, then we need to return to the God that made her great in the first place. We need homes where the Bible is opened again. Schools where truth is taught again. And leaders who fear God more than they fear losing votes. This isn't about left or right. It's about right and wrong. It's about building a nation that our children won't be ashamed of. Protecting their freedoms, protecting justice, protecting their rights. It's about looking at this flag and knowing that it stands for one nation under God. And as long as I have breath, I will speak the truth. I will continue to bring God back to the center, reminding you guys of what's most important. Not our country, not our nation, not our world, but God and God's kingdom and Jesus' sacrifice. That's what's most important. Because if America turns back to God, there is nothing this nation can't overcome. That is the only way we win. The only way. And if you don't see it now, you'll see it eventually. You'll see it as the only way we can win. Because it truly is the only way we can win. And what do I mean by win? Well, personally, I mean expanding God's kingdom. But if you guys think that this nation is all there is, that these people here on earth, that your time on earth is all that there is, you're dead wrong, my friend. You're dead wrong. There is so much more to this. There's a spiritual war right now. Read this sign right behind me. There's a spiritual war happening right now. We battle materialism. We battle idolatry. We battle all of these things that we can see right here in front of us. But there's so much more going on behind the scenes. And that's why we need to have God as the foundation of who we are, as our identity. Because through God as our identity, we will establish a faith and a trust in Him that when bad things happen, we will only lean on Him. That we won't blame Him, that we won't act out in violence against other people or retaliate, that we'll lean on God, trust Him, that He is sovereign, and that His will is being done. That is all I advocate for on this show, on my other podcast, on my channel. That's who I stand for right now, and I will continue to stand for. So I appreciate you guys letting me monologue for a sec. I mean, you guys can't do anything. You're just watching or listening or whatever. But I want to remind you guys that America is not a crossroads. We either rebuild on the foundation of God's truth or crumble into chaos. Those are the only two options. I'm calling you to pray for this nation, engage civically, to vote for policies that uphold justice, and to be the salt and light wherever you are. Our nation's future depends on it. So thank you guys for watching or listening, whatever platform you're on. I encourage you guys to share this episode if you feel like you enjoyed it or it was helpful in any way. Go follow all my socials. They're in the About section on my YouTube channel. And if you're on Spotify, please rate the show. It helps me out a lot. So I hope this was helpful to anybody out there that might be struggling with this. But I am calling for Christian nationalism, not within a theocracy, but through moral standards and moral perspectives. We should be viewing Christianity and the Bible as the answer of how we should be living. If you're on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe and comment whatever you think. If you disagree with me on certain things, make sure to comment those arguments and I'll address them eventually. Thank you guys for listening. I'll see you next week.